Question 61. Do you have any relevant certificates or tickets for this work?
First, I understand that for Australian site work, the key entry tickets are the white card for construction and a first aid certificate, and I'm ready to get whatever is required before I start. Second, I've already looked into how to obtain them through a registered training organization, so I can have the right tickets in place quickly rather than treating it as an afterthought. Finally, I also know each site may require its own inductions and site-specific tickets, and I'm fully prepared to complete all of them and keep them current.
Question 62. Do you have any relevant experience for this kind of work?
First, while I haven't worked on a mine site before, I've done physically demanding part-time jobs like construction and busy restaurant work, and the biggest lesson I took from them is that safety always comes first, and that safety is actually the fastest way to get the job done. Second, I learned not to rush. When you rush, you start skipping safety without even noticing, and that's exactly what leads to mistakes, redoing the work and wasting time and cost. Finally, that's my own principle. Do it right once rather than fast twice. Doing it properly from the start is what actually saves the time, and I'm ready to follow your procedures exactly as they're taught.
Question 63. Do you have any experience operating machinery or equipment?
First, I haven't operated heavy mining machinery yet, but I've handled tools and equipment on construction sites, so I'm comfortable working around machinery, and I understand it has to be respected. Second, I also understand that every piece of equipment should carry a tag showing who checked it and when, along with the safety rules that come with it. So before I use anything, I check that tag and never operate a machine marked "Do Not Operate." Finally, I'm a quick and careful learner, so once I'm trained on your equipment, I'll operate it exactly by the procedure, not by guesswork.
Question 64. Do you have experience using personal protective equipment?
First, yes, on construction and site work I've worn PPE every day. A hard hat, safety boots, high-vis clothing, gloves, and eye and ear protection depending on the task. Second, I treat PPE as the last line of defense, so I check it before each shift and wear it properly every time. And I only use the certified gear the company issues, never my own random items, because approved equipment has to meet the proper standard. Finally, I also understand that each site sets its own PPE rules, so I'll always follow yours exactly, and I'll speak up if I ever see mine damaged or missing.
Question 65. Can you describe a time you had to follow instructions exactly?
First, on site work, following instructions exactly matters most with safety steps. For example, a set order for setting up or shutting down equipment, where changing the sequence can create a real hazard. Second, the way I make sure I get it right is to listen carefully, repeat the instruction back to confirm, and ask if anything is unclear before I start, rather than assuming. Finally, if I ever think there's a better way, I don't just change it on my own. I finish it as instructed, and then raise my idea with the supervisor afterward. Because on a work site, following the procedure comes before personal opinion.
Question 66. Can you give an example of a time you learned a new skill quickly?
First, when I started busy restaurant work, I had to learn the whole system fast, orders, timing, and the kitchen flow within just a few days, so I watched closely, asked questions early, and wrote down what I learned. Second, the key for me is not pretending I already know. I ask when I'm unsure, say it back in my own words to be certain, and then practice until it becomes natural. Finally, I believe repetition is the best teacher. So when I get the chance to learn something new, I put myself in that situation as often as I can, and I back it up with the standards or manual. Practice plus the proper knowledge is what makes learning stick.
Question 67. Can you handle repetitive tasks over a long period?
First, I actually see repetition as a natural part of life, and I'm comfortable with it, because on a work site, consistency is what keeps things safe and running smoothly. Second, the risk with repetitive tasks is that people go on autopilot and lose focus, so I keep myself sharp by staying aware of each step, not treating any of them as automatic. Finally, I stay motivated by keeping the bigger picture in mind. Each repeated task is part of a safe shift and a bigger goal. And I see repetition as the path to mastery. Doing the same thing well, again and again, is exactly how I expect to grow into an expert in this field.
Question 68. Have you had to handle several tasks at once? How did you manage?
First, yes, in busy restaurant work I often had several things going at once, so I'm used to staying organized when a lot is happening. Second, the way I manage it is to set priorities first and work through them one by one, in order of what's most urgent and most important, especially anything involving safety, rather than trying to do everything at once and doing it all halfway. Finally, if I'm ever given more than I can safely handle, I don't stay quiet and risk a mistake. I speak up early so the work can be shared or resequenced, because on a work site, doing it safely always comes before doing it all at once.
Question 69. Tell me about a time you worked under time pressure or a tight deadline.
First, during peak hours in restaurant work, everything hits at once, so I've had plenty of practice getting things done right while the pressure is high. Second, I also have a habit of writing things down, so I prepare for a deadline in advance and stay a step ahead instead of scrambling at the last minute, and I prioritize what matters most first, never letting speed push me into skipping a safety step. Finally, that's my principle. Speed comes from being clear, not from hurrying. Rushing blindly only creates mistakes that cost more time in the end.
Question 70. Have you ever worked in tough or harsh conditions?
First, yes, I've done construction and busy restaurant work through long shifts, in summer heat and on my feet for hours, so I know what it feels like when the body gets tired but the job still has to be done right. Second, I get through it on preparation rather than willpower alone, staying hydrated, pacing myself, and taking the proper breaks so I don't burn out or lose focus. Finally, I actually see harsh conditions as a test of self-management, and I'm confident I can adapt, because I've already pushed through demanding days without cutting corners on safety.
Question 71. Can you give an example of when you spotted a hazard and prevented an accident?
First, even without mine experience, I've kept an eye out for hazards on any worksite, for example, spotting a spill on the floor or a cable left across a walkway before someone could trip. Second, the moment I see something like that, I don't just walk past it. I make it safe if I can, and I report it so it gets fixed properly. Finally, I believe most accidents can be prevented if people stay alert and speak up early, so I'd rather stop and flag a small risk than stay quiet and hope nothing happens.
Question 72. Have you ever had a leadership or supervisory role?
First, I've been in roles where I had to take responsibility and keep a team on the same page, but I'm not applying here to be a leader. I'm here to be a reliable part of the crew and learn the job properly from the ground up. Second, what that experience gives me is useful in a different way. I understand how important it is to follow the supervisor, share information clearly, look out for the people around me, and above all, I know how much principles and procedures matter, because I've seen that a team that respects the rules is a safe team. Finally, I lead best by example anyway, doing my job safely and well so others can rely on me. And that's exactly the kind of teammate I want to be on your site.
Question 73. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. How did you handle it?
First, I believe anyone can make a mistake, but a real lesson is often born from one. So what matters is how you handle it. Second, once during a busy shift I made a mistake, and I reported it to the supervisor immediately rather than hiding it, because a small mistake caught early is easy to fix, while a hidden one can turn dangerous. Finally, I then analyzed why it happened and shared the cause and a prevention plan with the team. And when a teammate makes a mistake, I believe we should build a culture that uses it as a learning tool rather than blaming the person, because blame makes people hide mistakes, while learning from them keeps everyone safe.
Question 74. What have you learned from past work that will help you in this job?
First, the most important thing I've learned is that safety and reliability matter more than speed. Showing up on time, doing the job properly, and never cutting corners is what earns trust anywhere. Second, I've learned the value of clear communication, sharing information early, confirming instructions, and speaking up when something isn't right, which prevents small problems from becoming big ones. Finally, I've also learned to break a problem down into smaller parts and solve it quickly. Even when things get busy or urgent, I stay focused, analyze what's really happening, and act step by step. And I believe that skill will help a lot on your site.
Question 75. Why do you think your experience and skills are a good fit for this job?
First, whatever the job title was, my experience has taught me the three things that matter most on any worksite: putting safety first, communicating clearly, and being reliable. And those are exactly what Fifo work demands. Second, I'm used to physical, hands-on work, following procedures exactly and staying focused under pressure so I can settle into your site quickly and safely. Finally, even where I don't have direct mine experience, I'm a fast and careful learner who breaks problems down and keeps improving. So I won't just fill the role, I'll grow into someone your team can count on.
Question 76. What would you do if an instruction was unclear or you didn't understand it?
First, I would never guess or pretend I understood. I would ask the person to explain again until I'm completely clear, because on a worksite, guessing is what leads to mistakes and accidents. Second, I would write it down and say it back to them step by step, so they can correct me if I've missed something, especially for anything with several stages. That way there's no misunderstanding before I start. Finally, I see asking a question as a sign of responsibility, not weakness. I'd much rather take a moment to be sure than rush ahead and get it wrong.
Question 77. What would you do if a piece of equipment broke down or malfunctioned?
First, I would stop using it immediately and never try to force it or work around the fault, because a faulty machine is one of the most common causes of serious injury. Second, I would tag it as out of service so no one else operates it by mistake, and report it to the supervisor or maintenance straight away. Finally, I would wait for someone qualified to check or repair it. I wouldn't try to fix it myself unless I'm trained and authorized to, because guessing with equipment is how accidents happen.
Question 78. What would you do if work was stopped because of weather or something unexpected?
First, I would follow the site's instructions calmly. If work is stopped for safety reasons like a storm or heat, that's the right call, and I wouldn't push to keep working when it isn't safe. Second, for a short stoppage, I'd use the downtime well, checking my PPE and equipment, helping prepare for the restart, or doing any safe task the supervisor needs. Finally, if it's a longer stop and we're kept at camp, I'd look after myself and stay ready, indoor exercise, some quiet time to reset, and keeping my condition up, so I'm fit and focused the moment we get the all clear.
Question 79. What would you do if something unexpected happened that you weren't prepared for?
First, I would stay calm and quickly assess the situation before acting. In an unexpected moment, a clear head is the most important tool, and rushing usually makes things worse. Second, if there's any risk to safety, my first move is always to stop and make it safe, then call the supervisor. I won't try to be a hero and handle something beyond my training on my own. Finally, once it's under control, I'd help sort it out as directed, and afterwards, I'd think about what caused it and share it with the team, so we're better prepared if it ever happens again.
Question 80. What would you do if you were given more work than you could safely handle?
First, I would speak up early and let the supervisor know, rather than quietly taking it all on and risking a mistake. Being honest about my limit is part of working safely. Second, I wouldn't just say it's too much. I'd suggest what to prioritize, ask whether the work can be resequenced, and let my teammates know so we can share the load, because a good team helps each other rather than letting one person get overwhelmed. Finally, I see this as protecting the job, not avoiding it. Pushing past a safe limit to look tough is exactly how tired mistakes and accidents happen.